So I'm here at Indiecade East 2018, and I'm watching as they're setting up a certain card game called the Metagame. It sounds like it has a very interesting premise. Good sir, could you tell us your name and your role in the game?
Sure, John Sharp, and I'm one of the designers of the Metagame.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Sharp. Could you tell the good folks at home a bit about the Metagame? Like, what sort of game is this exactly?
Sure, it is, I guess it would fit into the category of party game, so in the spirit of Cards Against Humanity and monikers and that sort of thing. There are two different kinds of cards. Culture cards, so that's got all sorts of pop culture on it, games, movies, books, films, clothes, you name it. And then there are opinion cards, which are basically different topics you might want to discuss, like which is more beautiful or which is more likely to cause a fight and that sort of thing. What they're setting up over there is the very first version of the metagame, which is basically the conference version. First time we ran it, we had about 3,000 people playing at the Game Developers Conference. Yeah, 3,000 people were playing across the week of the show. And it went so well, we jumped on Kickstarter in the middle of the week and launched a campaign to actually get the thing printed and distributed. And the rest is sort of history, but as part of that process of trying to convert it from a conference game to something 2 to 4, 6 people could play at home, we developed another 9 different variations of games you can play with the deck. So some are for 2 people, some are for 4 or 5 people, some are for 3. Some get you arguing, some you don't have to say a word. Some are cooperative, some are competitive. So we're trying to find a way to make the deck as flexible as it could be and as open as it possibly could be to different kinds of play. Really, I guess the main thing is you've got to kind of be interested in pop culture.
Yeah, that sounds like a very interesting premise. So now, what made you want to make this sort of game? Like, where did this idea come from?
Sure. The company that makes the metagames, Local Number 12. And over the years, our kind of primary interest in games as a company has been taking things people already do and wrap a play structure around it. So like our very first game was called Backchatter, and it was a Twitter game that we noticed that when people were at conferences or big events, there was always this sort of back channel of Twitter action going on about whatever was happening. So we designed a game that's essentially like betting on a horse race, but instead of betting on horses, you're betting on what are people going to be tweeting about during this particular set time, right? So we were taking something people did anyway, just sort of talking about what's going on around them. We tried to wrap a game around it. The metagame was our next game. We noticed that people like to talk about pop culture, right? So, all right, well, let's try to wrap a structure around that facilitates and maybe enhances things that people are already doing.
Very nice. Now, have you been working on making board and card games for a very long time, or?
Between the 3 of us and Local Number 12, we've been making, I guess, we'll set the marker at when we start getting paid to make them, maybe. And so between us, we probably have 50 years of game development experience. We've, in various configurations, made a number of card games, but we've also done video games, like Eric Zimmerman, who's one of the folks, ran a company called Game Lab, which was one of the first kind of indie developers, right? So we don't just do card games. We're working on another game right now that's an iOS word puzzle game, for example.
Okay. Are you at liberty to discuss that one at all? Or?
Sure. Yeah, it's called Lost Words. And basically the way that game works is we take Creative Commons literature and we produce word puzzles out of it. And there's different kind of puzzle types inside the game. And so essentially what you do is you sort of solve word puzzles as a way to move through books, a work of literature.
So, essentially, it was the best of times, it was worst of.
And then, yes, you have to figure out what the word might be. That is one of the modes, but there's also right now 9 other puzzle types. And by the time we launch, we'll probably have more like 20 different puzzle types that are all, playing with literature.
That sounds very cool. Do you guys have any plans to expand to Android?
Yeah. If the market will permit, then yes, we will.
You have a customer here, man. I'll take it. I love this concept.
Well, right. We'll mark you down for one.
Excellent. Very cool. So now I'm obligated to ask this of everybody.
Sure.
What is your favorite game of all time? Go.
Oh, wow. I think it might be Tempest, the arcade game from the 80s. Yes, yeah. I know I'm a sucker for vector graphics, and that one, color vector graphics, what more could someone like me ask for from a game? But I think I also I love the sort of hypnotic nature of that game.
I mean, it's frantic, but kind of soothing, Yeah.
Were
you at Indiecade a couple of years ago, or no?
You're talking about that pseudo-Russian game? Yes. I can't remember the name of it, but I love that thing. I love that they hacked up, I think they took an old asteroids monitor those vector monitors are extremely rare now. And so I think they end up having to cannibalize some other, probably otherwise deceased cabinet to get that thing. But yeah, that was very cool.
I played that one. I really dug it. But yeah, it's neat to see people making new stuff with old stuff,
Yeah.
Oh, very nice. So now, also we like to ask, if you had any advice for somebody who would like to get into your line of work, making games of any sort, what would you offer?
Make games. The best way to get into any field is to do the thing that field does, right? So, start simple, right? You're not going to make the best game ever on your first try. I teach at a Parsons School of Design, as does local number 12's Colleen Macklin, and then Eric Zimmerman teaches at NYU, right? So I think something we often will see is folks new to games will try to make basically they try to make the end-all and be-all game they've imagined in their heads the first time through. Probably ought to put that one off for a little while, right? And just start with something a little more modest that is within the realm of what you can actually produce, right? Whatever your craft skills might be. Of course, push those a little. But, it's all about closing the gap between your idea and what you can actually produce, right? And so the tighter those are, the more likely you are to have a successful game. Then the other piece of advice I would have is once you've made that first prototype, get somebody you don't know to play it, right? You learn.
Mom, is it good?
Yeah, Mom. Mom's answer is always yes, unless your mom loves you enough to be honest with you.
How much does your mom love you? Go into game design and you'll find out. Well, John, it has been a pleasure to talk with you. So let's say folks want to find out more about the Metagame. Where can they go?
They can go to metagame.me. So Metagame, but the .me.
Okay, so fancy URL. Nice. Let's say they'd like to follow you, perhaps on Twitter. Where can they go?
JOFSHARP. J of Sharp.
Gotcha. My favorite key. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Sharp. I hope you enjoy your Indiecade.
Sure. Thanks.